everyone, I'm Jace. Welcome back to my channel, and for today's video, I thought I should share with you my thoughts on the Chica-Y-Chico semi-matte cushion. Now, Chica-Y-Chico actually has another cushion which is what they're really known for, and that's the matte cushion. But as I've mentioned in some of my older videos, I do not really like matte products because I feel like they make me more oily. So I opted for the semi-matte cushion instead. And when I was reading online about it, I found that it was marketed towards people with oily dehydrated skin, which is exactly my skin type. And it said that it would be matte on top, but it should not be drying at all. So that's why I immediately purchased it, and it was only at around 600 pesos that time. So I thought it was a good price for a product. Now, before I give my review, I thought I should share first that I do not like to wear makeup, especially not on a daily basis, which is why I normally opt for cushions instead of foundations. Now, when looking for a cushion, I know that most of them are not high coverage, and I normally just opt for light to medium coverage anyway, so that's why I don't find it that hard to look for cushions. The only preference I have when looking for cushions is that I want them to be semi-matte. Most cushions give a very dewy look, which I'm not that fond of, and I'm not that much of a fan of very matte textures either because I feel like it makes me oilier in the long run. So when I saw this, and I didn't really have that much expectations for it, but I was excited to try it because I felt like it was marketed really well towards people with oily dehydrated skin. Now, first off is actually the packaging. I actually really like the packaging because it's matte, it doesn't really get your fingerprints. And even if there are very few scratches on it, it couldn't be seen, which is something that I really appreciate, so that I could just toss the cushion in my bag and not have to worry about it too much. It's quite sturdy, even if it just feels like a thick plastic. But yeah, in general, I really like it and how simple it is. Next up is color and coverage. Now, the color is actually, well, the one that I purchased is actually the darkest shade, number 23. Number 23. And normally the darkest shade in Korea, which is 23, is my skin tone, but just a little lighter, which is fine because most products oxidize anyway, so that it turns a little darker and blends in perfectly with my skin. But yeah, so this is a little lighter than my natural skin tone. But the thing is, it doesn't oxidize as much. Now, that wasn't really a problem for me because it's still really close to my skin tone. So it doesn't really have to oxidize that much for it to blend with my skin tone. But because of that, I don't think it should be used by people with much darker skin tone than me. Simply because I don't think there are that much Korean products that have a wide range of colors yet. Now for coverage, it is pretty light to medium. I don't normally use that much makeup. I normally just apply 1 to 2 layers of cushion anyway. And it does pretty fair at covering up some redness. I can't say that it's that good at covering dark spots. Well, it depends on the dark spot, but you might still need concealer if you really have some blemishes or spots that you want to hide. But for somebody like me who doesn't like to use makeup that much anyway and just opts for a natural look, I think it's pretty fine. Now for application, I've actually tried it on no primer, with primer, and with a mist primer if you think that's a different category. But anyway, when I applied it on my skin without primer, so I just go with my regular skincare routine ending with sunblock, and then I would put this on top. It looks pretty natural. I think it gives the very matte finish that it was promised, but it wasn't too matte that it looks like my face was dry. But yeah, it was pretty matte, and then my face was not shiny at all, which is something you should consider. But I do personally prefer to use a primer under this. And by a primer, I really mean those silicone-y kinds of primers, not the mist kind of primers, because I feel like it really smoothens out my skin first before I apply the product. And so when I apply the product, it actually looks really smooth. And I think because of the primer, I feel like the product still looks matte but already gives this slight glow, which I think is really pretty. Yeah, generally, I prefer it with a primer underneath because I think that's what makes it look the prettiest. Now, lastly, I used a mist primer before applying this one time or twice. Now, I like to separate mist primers because I think they give off a completely different texture from regular primers because they are more watery. And some mist primers aren't purely for primer purposes. So the one that I have is actually a part mist and part primer. It's not fully marketed as a primer. So that's what I used under this one time. And it looks pretty natural, but for me, it was actually a bit harder to spread it out when I had to do that. I'm not that sure why. Actually, I'm really not that sure why. But it was a little harder to spread out, and I don't know, just it didn't look that great as the first two that I mentioned, which is the regular skincare routine with sunblock as the primer, and as with a regular primer. Now, the only thing I don't particularly like about it is that I don't really find it moisturizing or hydrating. Now, I know I'm not supposed to depend on makeup to give my skin hydration, but I remember when it was marketed, it said that it would be really hydrating and moisturizing underneath. And I didn't really feel that. Although I do appreciate that the appearance was matte but not too dry, and it didn't dry me out anyway. I didn't really find it to be as moisturizing or nourishing as I hoped it would be. I've tried other cushions which felt a lot healthier on my skin, and I guess this just wasn't one of them. But with that being said, again, I don't find it as a bad product. I actually think that if you do a pretty moisturizing skincare routine in the morning, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you're one of those people that likes to have as little steps in the morning as possible, yet would still like to keep a very hydrated look and feeling, I don't think I could recommend this to you. Now, overall, this is an okay cushion. It's definitely not my favorite, but I don't regret purchasing it either. I think it was pretty good for the price tag. Again, the coverage is light to medium. The color could be a little light on you. It doesn't oxidize that much, and it gives a pretty natural finish, especially when you start to oil up a bit. Generally, it's an okay cushion. It's good for its price. I would recommend it to you if you want to try it out and want to look at cheaper cushions. I think it works pretty well. But will I repurchase it? I'm not so sure yet. I think I have other cushions that I want to try out first. So basically, I'd give it a 3 out of 5, which I think is pretty average. Now, I hope this review was helpful to you. And if you'd like to see me make more videos, you could click the subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be notified when I make a new one. I hope you all have a nice day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!